If a server whispered, "This place is a trap," would you have the courage to find out why? If you're thinking about applying here, don't. This place is a trap. The words landed softly on the table with a slice of chocolate cake, gentle as a breeze, but sharp as a blade. The server didn't make eye contact with the middle-aged man, sitting quietly in the corner of the restaurant. A man she assumed was just another weary traveler, stopping by for a quick meal. But in truth, he was far from a stranger. The man with salt and pepper hair under an old baseball cap was Nathan Cole, the founder of the famed Cold Stone Grill restaurant chain, once hailed as a symbol of modern American cuisine. From humble beginnings with a food truck parked beside an old lumberyard in Kansas, he had built a culinary empire with nearly 40 locations nationwide. And yet, in that moment, those 7 simple words stopped him cold. Because if a staff member, someone on the front line serving customers, could whisper that to a stranger, what was truly rotting behind the warm glow of the lights and the crackle of the coal-fired grill? Nathan hadn't come to enjoy a family recipe steak. He was here to investigate, not through spreadsheets, but with his own eyes and heart. This Springfield location had been reported as stable, but revenue numbers couldn't hide the rising complaints about the toxic work culture, the abnormally high staff turnover, and the eerie silence that shadowed internal reviews. Dressed in a worn flannel shirt and a cheap watch, Nathan returned in a form no one would recognize. No longer the CEO, but a silent observer. The moment he stepped through the door, he sensed something was wrong. A flickering bulb on the porch, trash bins spilling over, and a front desk smile so mechanical it reminded him of an assembly line rather than a human welcome. But it wasn't until he heard those words, "This place is a trap," that he realized something was deeply broken. Not at the staff level, but within the very system he once proudly called a house of integrity. And now, that house was cracking, not from the outside, but from within. It wasn't the first time Nathan had stepped into a Cold Stone Grill restaurant, but it was the first time he felt like a stranger inside the very creation he once nurtured, down to each floor tile. From the worn oak table, he quietly scanned the room, missing no detail. The hanging lights still cast a soft amber glow, and the fireplace in the back still burned brightly, just as it had when he first designed it. But the rhythm of this place had shifted. The air was so heavy it could be felt just by watching the eyes of the staff. Avoidant, tense, numb. The server, Lana, the same girl who had whispered that warning moments earlier, moved between tables with a kind of weary precision, as if each step required her to carefully balance pressure and endurance. He noticed that every time the shift manager emerged from the back kitchen, her spine stiffened instinctively, and her eyes flickered as if preparing to dodge something unseen. Tables remained uncleared. Empty bread baskets were left sitting in place, and the crumpled menus all pointed to one thing. The culture of this place was decaying day by day. Nathan clenched his hand slightly. Not out of anger, but out of worry. Worry that the thing he had once built on trust and dreams had been reshaped by the very people he had once entrusted with its future. 4 years ago, when the first branch opened in Chicago, he was there raising a glass beside his mother, the woman who taught him how to pan-sear a steak just right, tender enough to honor both the cut and the dignity of the kitchen. But today, as an unrecognizable traveler, he found himself facing a question that didn't come with easy answers. How had things come to this without him knowing? Had he, in the pursuit of expansion and fundraising, handed over the steering wheel to those who cared only for numbers and not for people. When Lana returned to the table, she remained polite, but her eyes couldn't hide the fatigue. When he casually remarked, "I saw the hiring sign out front, was thinking of applying," she didn't smile, just replied softly, "If you really need a job, you might want to think twice." That response felt like the second blade, confirming that the wrongdoing wasn't hiding in the shadows. It was alive and well under the very golden light he used to be proud of. And if he did nothing, soon the place once hailed as a symbol of decency would be nothing more than a hollow shell of a broken promise. The watch on Nathan's wrist ticked forward minute by minute as he sat there, beside a glass of cheap red wine and a plate of grilled chicken. Lana's honest recommendation. It wasn't the dish that gave him pause, but the way she spoke about it. Quiet, sincere, not in defiance, but with the kind of honesty only exhaustion could bring forth. The meal passed like a wordless soundtrack, and Nathan didn't ask much, only watched in silence. He noticed how Lana moved, how she scanned every table yet never lingered too long. Every time the manager appeared, the air in the room froze for a split second before everything pretended to fall back into place. It wasn't the pressure of work. It was something else. An invisible kind of control, the kind he had once sworn would never exist in any Coldstone Grill location. When Lana returned with dessert, Nathan offered another comment, half joke, half test. "I think I really might apply. This town seems peaceful. And the restaurant, well, it seems okay too." Lana paused just as her fork grazed the table, her eyes unintentionally meeting his, not sharp, not cold, but unmistakably clear. "If you're really serious, there are better places," she said softly. Then, as if regretting her own words, quickly looked away. "But thank you. You're the only one tonight who asked me like you really meant it." That sentence struck Nathan deeper than any criticism. Because if employees no longer believed in change, then the real damage wasn't in broken procedures, but in stolen trust. He left the restaurant just before 9 p.m., but didn't head straight to the hotel. Instead, he circled around to the back parking lot, where a dim light flickered from a bulb near death. 15 minutes later, Lana emerged. No apron now, just a thin jacket and eyes that still carried wariness. "You've got 10 minutes, she said, "and I'm risking my job for this." Nathan nodded, offering no name, no title. "I don't want you to lose anything. I just want to know what's really happening here." Lana looked up at him and sighed. This place isn't broken by accident. It was designed to be this way. In the wind sweeping across the empty parking lot, Lana spoke, not with self-pity, but with a chain of truths so cold they stung. She said employees here were capped at a maximum of 29 hours per week, just enough to avoid providing benefits, though the workload equaled 35. Sometimes even 40 hours. At first, they said it was just temporary, after the pandemic, she said quietly, but then it became the standard. If anyone refused extra shifts, their schedule would be cut in half the following week. No one resisted. Everyone was afraid. Nathan said nothing. He had believed the system he built was rooted in fairness and respect, but now those values had been twisted into tools of control. "What about tips?" he asked softly, already knowing the answer but hoping she'd contradict him. Lana smirked, half a laugh, half resignation. "Everything goes into something they call a shared pool. But each month, there's a deduction for administrative costs, broken equipment, and all these invisible charges no one understands. We end up with about 20% of what the guests actually leave." Nathan clenched his hand. "That's theft," Lana nodded. But it's wrapped in contracts, policies, and a lot of nice-sounding words. She paused, then asked, "Why do you care? No one cares. The good ones leave. The rest just learn to cope. And you?" Nathan didn't answer right away. He just looked at her, a young woman who had once believed in the system, now speaking in the middle of the night, as if this were her final act of duty. "If someone told your story," he said softly, "do you think anyone would listen?" Lana pressed her lips together. "I've been here long enough to know. No one listens." He nodded gently. "Then maybe I'll be the first." And in that moment, no more words were spoken. But what remained unsaid rang louder than anything else. A battle had begun, and though small, they were no longer alone. For the next 3 days, Nathan Cole was no longer the anonymous owner of Coalstone Grill. Instead, he became 3 different people at 3 different locations: a temporary maintenance worker, a retired teacher surveying the market for his niece, and a food blogger tourist snapping photos for a personal site. At each place he visited, the story repeated itself, exactly the same. A bartender smiling stiffly when summoned to the manager's office, a cook scrubbing pans with hands cracked from chemical burns but too afraid to ask for a shift change, and always that small black box beside the hostess stand, where tips were contributed anonymously. This was no longer an isolated red flag. It was a pattern, a system, a design repeated with frightening precision. And the man behind it, Nathan now knew his name: Ronald Vane. Once a district inventory supervisor, Ronald had been personally promoted by Nathan after a training seminar years ago because he saw in him discipline and resolve. But perhaps Nathan had been wrong. The man he once trusted had built a silent empire of manipulation, dual bookkeeping systems, a payroll shell company named Pinex, and administrative fees that never made their way to staff. From his hotel room, Nathan pinned 15 red dots to a map, 15 locations under Ronald's control. The red strings linking the cities resembled the neural network of a cancer in metastasis. The feeling of betrayal struck deep in his chest, not just because of the money stolen, but for the countless dreams suffocated in silence. He called the only person in the company who knew he was investigating: Marlene, his longtime assistant, loyal and sharp. In a secure late-night call, she said only one name: "You need to call Sophia Chen." Sophia, the internal auditor who had been quietly reassigned after questioning untraceable expenses in the Springfield region. But she had never stopped watching. And now, she had proof. "This is no longer about local-level fraud, Mr. Nathan," she said, her voice steady and resolute. "This is a deliberate model of internal exploitation, shielded by the very systems we designed to protect our workers." Nathan went silent. The same hands that had built this brand on faith in professional integrity were now unpicking every rotten link handed to the wrong person. But he didn't turn back. The fire was lit, and he knew he had to be the one to put it out, or be consumed with everything he had built. For the first time in weeks, Nathan Cole stayed in Springfield, the place where it all began. No more disguises, no more hurried travel from city to city. But this time, he wasn't acting alone. Lana had become his right hand in the quiet campaign to expose the truth. With a secure phone provided by Marlene, she discreetly connected with employees from other branches, those willing to speak out, even if it cost them. Within 10 days, an underground network had formed. They called themselves Shift Zero, the ones without power in the system, but holding the voice for those being crushed in silence. There was a cook with a herniated disc from lifting overloaded stock crates, still marked fit for duty. A hostess forced into unpaid overtime. A waiter named Jace recently fired for using his phone on shift, when all he did was photograph altered schedules. Lana became the central coordinator, guiding them to capture tip receipts, back up work logs, and record morning briefings where managers issued veiled threats. Meanwhile, Nathan and Sophia built a massive case from behind the scenes, every page filled with irrefutable evidence. But secrecy couldn't last forever. Ronald began to sense something was wrong. He abruptly called an emergency regional video meeting, ordered an information containment directive, installed cameras in break areas, and started randomly checking employees' bags and phones. In Springfield, the air grew cold. Every footstep felt heavier. Lana whispered to Nathan via text, "They know someone is watching, but they don't know who." And just as he predicted, those cornered would never surrender quietly. They would strike back, and their first move was aimed directly at Lana. One Monday morning, as she was restocking the glassware shelf, the floor manager approached with a face carved in ice. "Ronald wants to see you. Now." Led through the narrow hallway behind the kitchen, past the temperature log board that hadn't been updated in weeks, Lana knew this wasn't a meeting. This was a trial, and possibly her sentencing. Ronald Vane leaned back in his office chair, as if he controlled the gravity in the room. His tailored grey suit was crisp, his smirk perfectly calculated, and his gaze dripped with contempt. In front of Lana lay a thick printed folder. Inside were accusations of unauthorized access to internal data, prohibited recordings, and aiding acts of espionage. Every word had been carefully selected to strike like a blade. She didn't deny them. But before she could say anything, the door swung open. A young hostess burst in, her face pale. "Sorry, but a team from headquarters just arrived. They're requesting a full staff meeting, immediately." Ronald frowned. "They're a week early." "No, they said today, and everyone's already gathered." Ronald adjusted his tie, stood, and barked at Lana to stay in the office. But just as the door closed, her hidden phone buzzed. A message lit up. "Come out, front row, trust me." The dining room had been cleared of tables and chairs, replaced with neat rows of wooden seats. Staff filled the room. 3 people stood at the front, 2 women and a man whose back was still turned. Lana recognized Sophia Chen. But when the man turned around, the room fell silent. No longer was he the flannel-wearing stranger. He was Nathan Cole, in a black suit, white shirt, and the stern eyes of a father returning to rebuild his own house. Ronald stepped forward, ready to speak, but Nathan cut him off. "This is not a routine inspection. This is a full audit." And he began presenting the evidence that the Shift Zero team had worked so hard to gather. Photos of altered payrolls, reduced shift hours, vanished tips, shell contracts, and fake payroll companies. The room buzzed between shock and release. But the final blow came when Nathan turned toward Lana. This woman, and others like her, risked their jobs and their reputations to speak truths that I, as the founder, had failed to hear. Lana stood, as if unable to believe what she was hearing. Starting today, she will serve as Regional Director of Employee Advocacy, reporting directly to me. And starting today, no truth stays buried. Ronald Vane tried to back away, but 2 security officers blocked the exit. "Ronald Vane, you are under arrest for financial fraud and employee exploitation." He said nothing. He knew it was over. But for Lana, it was only the beginning. Within just 2 weeks of the purge in Springfield, a sweeping reform campaign was launched across the entire Coldstone Grill system. But instead of flashy press releases or stage speeches, change began with something more familiar: a new mobile app. Every employee could now track their real-time hours, tips earned by shift, and all deductions, clear down to the last cent. No more vague payrolls, no more conveniently forgotten overtime hours. Benefits policies were also restructured with a more humane approach. Part-time workers logging 20 hours or more per week now received health insurance, paid time off, and the right to register flexible shifts to care for children or aging parents. Lana Marsh, now free of her apron, no longer moved between tables with a tray of drinks, but stepped into each location with a tablet in hand, listening, recording, and facilitating open table sessions, meetings without managers where employees could speak freely without fear of retaliation. She did not issue commands. She asked, "What makes you feel left behind?" And then she listened, truly listened, just as Nathan once had, sitting silently in a corner booth, observing with quiet clarity. In St. Louis, a head chef handed her a handwritten note. "It's been 3 years since I saw my son smile because I got home before midnight." In Tulsa, a young server was invited to join a manager-in-training program, something once thought impossible. In Wichita, a dishwasher was publicly praised for suggesting a new water-saving method for rinsing, small perhaps, but to him it was a sign that the culture was being reborn. As for Nathan, he no longer stayed holed up at headquarters. He moved, frequently, wiping counters, washing vegetables, teaching a young employee how to cut meat efficiently without waste. He issued a hard plastic card to every employee in the system. The front read, "Respect is not a policy, it's a promise." The back carried his personal email address, no assistant, no filter. One day in Springfield, Lana was handed a financial report. Sophia Chen smiled and said, 12% growth. And for the first time since our founding, not a single internal complaint has gone unanswered. Lana said nothing. She looked at the number, then across the dining room. A staff member, who had just raised their voice at a guest due to a misunderstanding, was gently pulled aside by a manager for a calm conversation instead of being yelled at. A single mother, picking up her child after her shift, was met with applause because she just received an internal scholarship. "There was a time I thought this place was just a beautiful trap," Lana said. "But now, it feels like what I once hoped for, a place truly worth starting over." 6 months after the day the quiet revolution began, the Coldstone Grill restaurant in Springfield had taken on a new identity, not just in decor, but in spirit. The dining room no longer felt heavy with tension. Instead, it was filled with conversation, laughter, and eyes that met each other without flinching, without fear. Lana sat at the same familiar table where it had all begun. Not to have dinner, not to check on systems, just to sit. Across from her, Nathan was there too. No longer the all-powerful CEO, but a man who had made mistakes and was now trying to repair them, detail by detail. "The first day I sat here," Lana said softly, "I felt trapped, not by the job, but by the sense that kindness was a luxury, that no one truly listened, that no matter how hard I tried, the door of opportunity would always close before me." She paused and looked Nathan in the eyes. "Now I'm the one holding the door, and I'm keeping it open." Nathan didn't respond right away. He simply reached into his jacket pocket and placed a thin envelope on the table. Inside was a short, elegantly designed document with the words "The Hearth Foundation" on the cover. A newly founded organization dedicated to protecting the rights of food service workers, beginning with Coldstone, but not ending there. The first page named its founding executive director, Lana Marsh. She looked at him, eyes wide with disbelief. "Why me?" "Because you saw what others overlooked," Nathan said. "Because you told the truth when no one had your back. And because, in a world where people cling to their positions out of fear, you stood up for those who had no voice." The idea for the foundation hadn't come from a boardroom meeting, but from an evening when Nathan visited a small branch in Kansas, where a janitor named Ruth told him she hadn't received a raise in 6 years. When he asked why she stayed, Ruth simply smiled and said, "Because I think if I stay long enough, maybe it'll change, even if I'm not the one to make it happen." That sentence stayed with him, just like Lana's first whispered words. This place is a trap. But now, everything had changed. That night, the restaurant closed earlier than usual to host a small celebration just for the staff and their families. No champagne, no live band, just warm food, the sound of children running through the room, and genuine embraces. Jessie, the bartender who was once fired for holding her phone too long, was now the head of new staff training. She smiled as she held a tip audit board and said, "I used to be punished for speaking up. Now I get rewarded for spotting errors." Before leaving the restaurant that night, Nathan paused in front of the wall near the kitchen. A new board had been put up to display each employee's personal goals. Buy my first car, take mum to the beach, get into college. Above them was a single line. Respect is not a policy, it's a promise. He pulled out a clean napkin, sat down at the same table from that first day, and wrote the sentence that had changed his life. This place used to be a trap. Now it is home. In the world of business, it is not payrolls or growth strategies that define the value of a brand, but how people are treated when no one is watching. Nathan Cole did more than expose wrongdoing. He rebuilt the foundation on trust, something seemingly fragile, yet the strongest bond any organization can have. If you believe that transparency and courage can change an entire system. Like this video, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more powerful true stories like this, and don't forget to leave a comment with the words "Speak the truth" to help spread this message.